Unbeknownst to her, she treated a man to coffee in line, a disguised millionaire gauging genuine kindness. The bell above the door chimed softly as Claire entered the cafe, her boots leaving small puddles on the aged tile floor. The aroma of espresso and freshly baked pastries enveloped her, soothing and nostalgic, yet tantalizingly elusive. Outside, the rain cascaded in frigid, relentless torrents, drumming against the windows like eager hands seeking attention. She wrapped her coat more snugly around herself. It was a weathered coat, oversized by 2 sizes, the lining frayed at the wrists, yet it belonged to her. She stepped to the end of the line, gripping the last $5 she possessed, sufficient for a small coffee, insufficient for rent, inadequate for tomorrow, but just enough for the moment. The cafe had a humble charm, filled with the warm scent of cinnamon mingling with a hint of fatigue. The queue dragged on, her stomach growled in protest. Before her was a man whose presence seemed to belong to a different world entirely. His gray coat draped listlessly over his tall frame, thoroughly drenched. His shoes bore the marks of wear, and his posture was bent, suggesting he bore burdens beyond the mere weight of the rain. She observed his hands trembling ever so slightly as he delved into his wallet. The young cashier, casually chewing gum, appeared distinctly unimpressed. "That'll be $4.65, she stated matter-of-factly. The man gazed into the depths of his open wallet. "I believed I had more," he stammered, as he fumbled to retrieve the coins. "Perhaps I misplaced a bill." "I was certain." An awkward silence lingered, expanding beyond the confines of time itself. A woman behind Claire whispered, "Some individuals simply squander everyone's time." Claire observed him, his shoulders drooping with shame, his voice carrying a subtle rasp, the tone of someone unaccustomed to seeking assistance. The cashier let out a weary breath. "Excuse me, do you happen to have a card on you?" I must have left it at home," he murmured gently. Claire acted on impulse, not considering the potential consequences of that coffee, nor did she pause to evaluate her choices. Her voice ascended, distinct and assured. "It's fine, I'll cover his coffee." The line fell silent. The cashier's eyes widened in surprise. "What about you?" Claire moved ahead, retrieving her wrinkled bill. "I mentioned that I'll cover the cost, just for the coffee." He pivoted gradually to meet her gaze. His eyes, shadowed and weary, locked onto hers with an expression that eluded her grasp. Surprise, undoubtedly, but also something deeper, a hint of wonder. "There's no need for that," he said. "I understand," Claire responded. She presented the bill. The cashier processed it, yet there was no applause, no words of gratitude. A sigh of annoyance came from someone behind her as the man took the paper cup, offering a subdued thank you to the barista. He turned his gaze back to Claire, this time with greater intensity. "Thank you," he said again, but this time with a measured pace, each word carrying more weight than you might realize. She offered a slight shrug. "It's merely coffee." He smiled, but it wasn't just any smile. It was one that bore the weight of years. He nodded once and moved toward the exit, the door chiming once more as he departed, disappearing into the gray. Claire ordered nothing for herself. Her pockets were empty now, yet she didn't feel a void. In some way she felt complete. She settled into a corner table, cradling her hands against the fabric of her coat for warmth. The rain outside continued to fall, its gentle tapping against the glass resembling a whisper she had yet to decipher. Claire's apartment carried a subtle aroma of cinnamon intertwined with damp drywall, evoking a sense of what had once been warm, inviting, and full of life, now faded by the passage of time and disregard. A space that groaned underfoot, exhaled softly upon settling, and lingered with scents far longer than it clung to aspirations. It was a modest area, merely a single room perched above an aging laundromat where the machines hummed into the late hours, the radiator in the corner clattered as if attempting to rouse itself, and the window above the sink never fully sealed, allowing a chilly breeze to sigh through the peeling paint. The wallpaper peeled as if it had attempted to escape, only to be persuaded to stay. The ceiling held the mark of a forgotten leak, yet it was home, or at least it once was. The eviction notice remained askew on the doorframe, dancing with each breeze that found its way through the opening. Claire had gone through it twice, first in disbelief and then again to confirm that the date remained unchanged. 3 days, perhaps 4 if the landlord happened to forget or was in a more lenient frame of mind. But Claire understood all too well that hoping for compassion was futile. The world had been stingy with grace lately. She let her canvas tote fall to the floor, where it sagged like a weary companion. With 2 soft thuds, her shoes slipped off, and the cold linoleum floor sent a shiver through the worn socks she had been wearing for far too long. She hadn't eaten since noon. There wasn't much available, just a bag of rice and a can of soup she was reserving for a chillier evening. It had been a week since she last bought groceries. Ever since the diner had decided to part ways with her. The manager mentioned budget cuts, low sales, and reduced traffic due to the highway construction. It's not about you, Claire. Yet it always seemed to be when your name was the one crossed off the schedule. When your apron sat there by itself, untouched, abandoned, as if that part of you had been cast aside. She had submitted applications to numerous places since then. Gas stations, corner shops, and even a bakery uptown that deemed her too shy for the role involving customers. She even interviewed at a self-health storage facility, where the manager inquired if she could smile with less nervousness, as though confidence were an adjustable setting. No one returned the call. The electricity bill had surged the previous month due to the radiator's failure, prompting her to rely on a space heater for a week to ward off the chill that threatened to seep into her very bones. That morning, the utility company had reached out once more. Ms. Langdon, this is your 3rd and final reminder. If the balance remains unpaid within 72 hours, we will move forward with interrupting the service. I see, Claire had responded as she always did. That night, rather than illuminating the room with brightness, she ignited the remnants of a candle. Rather than preparing a meal, she heated water for pasta she lacked, then extinguished the flame and observed the steam ascend like a delicate specter. In those moments when the weight of the world bore down on her, she instinctively turned to her journal. It was the sole remnant of her childhood that she had preserved. The leather cover had a gentle softness, with cracks delicately tracing the edges. The pages curled and buckled under the weight of ink and countless tears. Within lay her forgotten aspirations, blueprints for the bakery she had once envisioned in the margins of her textbooks, ingredient lists she had never had the means to purchase, and whimsical names of imaginary pastries she promised herself she would create one day. At present, it primarily contained hushed supplications. With a gentle touch, Claire turned to a fresh page, inscribing the date in elegant cursive at the top corner. November 3rd. She started to craft her words. Today I treated a stranger to coffee. I nearly didn't. Perhaps it was the reflection in his eyes that drew me in, a shared understanding that the world around us was overwhelming and burdensome. He expressed his gratitude as if it held significance. I believe that sufficed. Perhaps that will be the sole positive contribution I make this week. Perhaps that's acceptable. She gazed intently at the words. They appeared diminutive, delicate, yet they were undeniably present, and at times, presence was all she possessed. Claire gently closed the journal and placed it under her pillow, a ritual she had maintained since she was 12. In that moment, if the darkness became overwhelming, she would recall the essence of her true self, hidden beneath the weight of inadequacy. She nestled under the delicate blanket, drawing it up to her chin. The rain outside had diminished to a soft murmur. Within the soft glow of flickering candles, a girl without employment, warmth, or a defined path ahead had nonetheless decided to offer her generosity. In a realm perpetually yearning for abundance, perhaps, just perhaps, that was all there ever was. Claire was taken by surprise at the thought of encountering him once more. Yet, there he stood in the same coat, though this time it was less drenched. The same weary gaze, yet now it carried a sharper, more intense clarity. He lingered at the periphery of the cafe, observing her, not with the discomfort of an outsider, but with the heavy burden of a memory that had lingered far too long to be dismissed. That morning, Claire returned not for coffee. Her funds had run dry, but to peruse the community bulletin board by the restroom. Occasionally, There were advertisements for various part-time opportunities, such as dog walking, house cleaning, babysitting, and more. As she scanned the board, a voice drifted in from behind her, her focus unwavering as she continued her search. She spun around swiftly. There he was, the man for whom she had covered the coffee, looking a touch more polished this time, even if his boots still bore the marks of wear. He offered a smile, tinged with a hint of shyness. "Oh, it's you once more?" Claire remarked with hesitation. "Still lacking a wallet?" He chuckled, a soft, delightful sound. "No, I'm all set today. I just thought I'd attempt to reciprocate the kindness." Claire squinted her eyes in concentration. "I didn't do it for any kind of benefit." "I understand," he murmured gently. "That's the reason it held significance." A moment of silence lingered. Claire observed him with greater intensity now. He appeared out of place in this neighborhood. His speech was overly cautious, his posture excessively poised. "May I inquire about your identity?" she inquired. He reached out his hand. "Tom," he remarked. "Author? I'm an independent journalist working freelance, I suppose. I craft narratives that resonate with the essence of humanity, authentic and genuine." Claire refrained from shaking his hand. She repeated it, a hint of skepticism in her voice. He expressed his desire for a tale, suggesting that you may possess one worth sharing. Claire folded her arms across her chest. "What makes me a narrative? Because you treated someone to coffee even when your own finances were tight. Since you weren't anticipating gratitude. Unbeknownst to you, there was an observer in the shadows, and that observer was me." She remained silent. Tom James indeed persisted. "I assure you, my intention is not to cause any discomfort. I would really appreciate hearing more about this. Regarding yourself, if you would be open to sharing." Claire paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. There was an unsettling quality about him. Yet, there was an undeniable quality about him that felt right. "Very well," she replied. "Feel free to inquire." They lingered by the window, as sunlight filtered through the stained glass in soft, pale ribbons. James retrieved a notebook, not the fancy leather-bound variety, but rather a plain one with frayed edges. He held back his questions at first. Instead, he inquired about her name. She provided it. He inquired about the bakery sketch he had seen nestled within her notebook when she had momentarily opened it to make a note. Claire's eyes fluttered open. "Did you catch that? I observed nuances. Workplace risk." Thus, she conveyed her thoughts to him. Concerning the bakery, reflecting on the almond croissants her grandmother crafted each Saturday. Reflecting on the aspiration she had nurtured since her high school days to establish a venue named Sugar and Light. Concerning the accumulation of every gratuity she received. Reflecting on the gradual vanishing of funds once more. Because aspirations carry a heavier price than any lease ever could. James remained silent. He simply absorbed the words. His pen occasionally glided across the page, yet more often, he gazed at her as if she were not merely a voice, but a being of substance, of significance. As they went their separate ways that day, he remarked, "Perhaps we'll converse again if you're interested." Claire gave a slight shrug. "Absolutely. It's free to have a conversation." Yet, as he stepped out of the cafe, a sensation stirred within her. He was back, and he had gazed at her as if she held significance. She remained unaware that his true name was James Rowan. He had crafted 7 best-selling novels. That his photograph had once adorned the cover of The New Yorker. He had vanished from the public spotlight 2 years prior, declaring that he would never pen another word unless he uncovered a tale worthy of the silence he had suffered. She was unaware that she embodied that narrative. Not at this moment. In the ensuing fortnight, Claire and Tom settled into a serene, seemingly unintentional cadence. Their meetings were never planned. On certain days, their paths intertwined at the cafe. At other moments, in the small park just down the road, where pigeons flitted about the feet of children, and the breeze wafted the aroma of street pretzels mingling with the scent of fallen leaves. It was never serious, always simple, yet it started to seem like a recurring motif woven into her daily life. An existence she hadn't recognized she was seeking, until it had quietly settled in. Claire would express herself, and James, forever Tom in her eyes, would lend an ear. Not merely the courteous listening that others provided out of obligation, but the profound, attentive kind that made her feel as though her words carried significance. He jotted down notes in a tattered notebook with a pencil that perpetually appeared on the verge of running out of lead. He tilted his head ever so slightly, forehead creased in deep thought. For perhaps the first time in her existence, Claire felt that her narrative held significance. She revealed to him secrets she had kept locked away. She reminisced about the Sundays spent baking cupcakes with her grandmother, flour dusting the kitchen, her small hands struggling to grip the whisk, about how she had once held a deep conviction that she would have her own cafe by this time. She even confessed to the countless nights she dedicated to sketching logos, drafting menus, and crafting inviting spaces adorned with mismatched chairs and cinnamon-hued windows. However, she also shared the other details with him, reflecting on the gradual disintegration of that aspiration. It unraveled not in a sudden tempest, but through the gradual wear of job rejections, mounting utility bills, and a pervasive sense of solitude, one letdown at a time, until all that remained was a journal tucked beneath her pillow, and a heart that continued to hope, even when it seemed unwarranted. I can't quite understand why I continue to hold on to the belief that people are inherently good, she remarked, her finger gliding over the texture of the park bench. In that moment, he had smiled at her, not out of pity, but with a sense of deep respect. As a result of your existence, the moments they shared transformed into a unique refuge. At times, their words were few and far between. They strolled side by side for blocks, allowing the quiet to convey what language could not express. And sometimes she'd bake him muffins, barely held together with borrowed ingredients and a sprinkle of hope. He would take a bite, close his eyes, and hum as if savoring a cherished recollection. It brought a smile to her face each time. She experienced a sense of authenticity once more than just a challenge to address, like something beyond just a number with a late reminder, like someone whose presence felt like a blessing, not a weight. Until the moment everything unraveled. It began without any forewarning. As is often the case with betrayals, Claire found herself in the cozy embrace of the used bookstore on 9th Avenue, seeking refuge from the drizzle and the heaviness in her heart. She adored the spot, with its winding paths and chairs that dipped just a bit too low. She had no intention of making a purchase. She simply adored the scent of aged paper and the tranquility it brought. As she casually browsed the new releases shelf, driven more by routine than expectation, her eyes landed on it.
À visage.
No, deep, mysterious eyes, a familiar, serene smile. She stood still, caught in the moment. Her heart raced. Her hands grew icy. The reverse side of the dust jacket stated, James Rowan, a name that had faded from her memory, yet remained celebrated in the realm of literature. Acclaimed novelist, solitary mastermind, disappeared from the limelight following the release of his 7th book. He famously proclaimed that he had exhausted all his words. Up to this point, Claire gazed intently at the photograph. She was confident in her decision. It was indeed him, not him, James. She exited the bookstore, her mind swirling with thoughts. Upon returning to her apartment, she rifled through the hastily written notes he had left on their shared coffee shop napkins and scattered pages. Fragments of her existence reflected in written words. Words she believed had been exchanged between them in secrecy. Unspoken reflections she kept to herself. And everyone was present, exactly as it is. The following morning, she discovered him at their familiar bench in the park. A notebook rests on his lap. He glanced upward, anticipating a grin. She refrained from taking a seat. Your name isn't Tom, she remarked. Every word is frigid, level. James opened his eyes wide. Claire. James Rowan, she interrupted. Creator, hermit, deceiver. He rose gradually. Kindly. You've been putting my story on paper, she snapped. You transformed my existence, my narrative, into one of your sentimental little tales. Didn't you? It's not what you think, he replied, his voice tight with tension. "I didn't mean to ask if you're working on a book." She insisted. After a moment of uncertainty, he gave a slight nod. "Only a single time." Her voice trembled. "Am I merely a shattered piece in your grand creation? Yet another tale designed to evoke a sense of virtue in readers for a brief moment?" "No," he said, taking a step closer. "Your influence reignited my passion for putting pen to paper. Your courage is commendable. Your generosity shone through even in your moments of emptiness. Once more, you ignited my faith." She retreated, her gaze aflame. "I assisted a man," she remarked with a hint of resentment. "Not wealthy, not a well-known writer. A solitary figure, appearing both chilly and adrift." James gulped nervously. "And I was that individual." "No," she murmured. "You were an experiment, and I was completely unaware that I was part of it." He extended his hand. "Is that you, Claire?" I transformed it into hope, yet she was already moving on. The rain started to descend, gentle and persistent, seeping into her sleeves. She wrapped her coat around herself more snugly, striving to maintain her composure. The betrayal stung deeply, not due to his fame, but because he had truly seen her and then exploited that connection. James remained still, allowing the rain to drench his pages, his gaze fixed on the woman who had rescued him, now turning away, this time due to his own actions. The envelope bore no embellishments, devoid of any name on its surface, save for the word Claire, inscribed in meticulous, slanted script. It lay hidden beneath the welcome mat outside her apartment door, only slightly exposed, as if it wished to remain undiscovered unless she genuinely sought it out. Claire noticed it as she entered, drenched from the persistent drizzle that had hung around throughout the morning. Her fingers lingered uncertainly before reaching for it. She recognized the sender even before she laid eyes on the message. She gently shut the door, settled into the petite chair by the window, and carefully unfolded the letter, her hands quivering with anticipation. Said Claire, "I expressed that tales meant the world to me. That was false. For a long time I believed the world had enough voices, especially after all I had put to paper, when my own words started to feel hollow. But then I encountered you. I believed I was witnessing a fleeting act of compassion from an unknown individual. I was unaware that I had come across a tale I never anticipated rediscovering, one that required no writing for me to accept its truth. I never meant to portray you as a character. You were never that kind of person. You played no role in my narrative. You transformed into it. I wish to share this with you. I decided to set the manuscript aside. It has yet to be presented to any publishing house. No editor present. Do not engage with the media. Just you. If you choose to cut off all communication with me, I will respect that decision, but I felt it was important for you to be aware of my feelings. You transformed me. I can only wish that, in some way, I contributed something meaningful." James Clare cradled the pages in her lap for what felt like an eternity, her breath suspended in her throat. The manuscript was included by him. She gazed at it, a blend of apprehension and intrigue swirling within her. The title was inscribed in elegant script on the opening page, capturing the essence of a girl who, despite having no reason to continue, still made the choice to give. She turned to the opening chapter. It all started in a quaint little cafe, where a simple gesture of goodwill unfolded. A girl, with her last $5 in hand, chose to give it away, not because she had extra to share, but because she recognized the need in someone else. Every page was a reflection of her essence, her narrative woven not through facts and bullet points, but through emotions. The way she perceived the world in solitude, the silent resilience she bore as if it were a second skin, her laughter, her tears, her aspirations of a bakery infused with the scent of cinnamon and renewed possibilities. Yet it was not a scene of pity. Rather, it was one of deep reverence. James described her like one might describe the moon, not merely for its light, but for its ability to shine even in solitude. Claire flipped to a page close to the center, where James recounted the moment he saw her assisting a child with their shoelaces outside the park. Her voice was soft, as if the world had caused her pain, yet she clung to the belief that kindness was still possible. I was unaware of what I sought until I witnessed her in that moment, an experience so unique that it seemed untouched by others, and in that instant, I realized my desire to capture her story. Claire wiped her face, becoming aware that she had been shedding tears silently. But these were not the tears she had become accustomed to in recent months. Those of frustration, loneliness, or hunger. No, this was different, something more uplifting. Someone had recognized her, not for her shortcomings, not for her battles, but for her generous spirit, offering without expectation of reward. She gently shut the manuscript, her hands lingering on the cover. A knock echoed through the doorway. She stood still, caught in the moment. She rose to her feet, approached and pulled it open. Only silence lingered, accompanied by the delicate aroma of rain, while distant footsteps gradually disappeared into the stillness. Claire gazed up at the sky, and for the first time in what seemed like ages, a smile graced her lips. Claire had strolled 4 blocks, beyond the point where she intended to turn, not once but twice. Her fingers clutched the manuscript, its corners worn and softened from countless readings. The rain whispered against the fabric of her jacket, while the wind ushered in the first hints of winter's chill. She found herself uncertain about what compelled her to leave. Perhaps it was the manner in which he expressed his thoughts about her. Perhaps it was the stillness in her apartment, now overwhelming with the weight of being acknowledged. Or perhaps it was simply this. She devoted her existence to others, yet they never recalled her name. James recalled every detail. She arrived at the location inscribed delicately on the reverse side of the envelope. The townhouse sat silently on a slender, tree-draped street. Ivy wound its way around the iron gate, while a soft, warm light flickered behind the windows. She lingered for a moment, hesitating, then took a step forward and pressed the bell. No response, yet the door stood slightly open. With a moment of uncertainty, she finally decided to push it open. The aroma enveloped her initially. Cinnamon, nutmeg, a subtle hint of brown sugar, dissolving in rich butter. She entered a humble kitchen, adorned with shelves filled with well-worn cookbooks, and 2 weathered mugs resting on the table. At the stove stood James, transformed from the enigmatic figure he once was, no longer the creator cloaked in secrecy, now adorned in a flour-dusted apron, gazing at the oven timer as if it held the power to evaluate him. He turned, caught sight of her, and offered a faint smile, not one of relief or victory, but something gentler, akin to forgiveness. "You're present," he remarked. She remained silent. He motioned toward the counter. "I gave your grandmother's pecan bread recipe a go. You once remarked that she gauged love by the pinch, rather than the cup." Claire arched an eyebrow, moving in closer. "And you recalled." "I recalled it all," James stated. They sat at the kitchen table, 2 warm slices on mismatched plates. The silence between them transformed from sharp to comfortable, like a quilt draped over something old and aching. They savored each bite. He raised his gaze. "Enough with the deception," James declared. She had imparted a wealth of truth, and Claire met his gaze. "I never intended to be your drinking buddy," she remarked. He responded, "You weren't. You inspired me to share my stories once more." She remained expressionless, yet she held her gaze steady. Following a lengthy silence, she delved into her coat and set the manuscript down on the table. "I wish to assist in bringing it to completion," he blinked. "Do you really? However, it's not solely about me," she remarked. "Countless individuals exist who embody kindness, women who part with their last $5, men who graciously hold doors open in the rain, and children who generously share half of their lunch. We craft their narratives." James leaned back. He remarked on the remarkable kindness found in everyday individuals. Claire gave a subtle nod. "We bring their existence to the forefront." In an instant, the girl who had once possessed nothing, and the man who had everything yet felt a profound emptiness, chose to create something together that neither could achieve on their own. Not from a sense of guilt, nor from a desire to save, but from a place of deep respect. From a place teetering on the edge of affection. They clinked mugs that night, not to conclusions, not to fresh starts, but to the serene, gradual middle where 2 lives start to intertwine. Only honesty remains, devoid of deception. And phrases. United. The novel made its debut on the first Tuesday of spring. It came in quietly, without a grand spectacle, no star-studded launch event, no high-profile critiques from the literary establishment, just a subtle presence in independent bookstores, library collections, and local cafes where warmth was still offered alongside a steaming cup. The title was unassuming, yet it conveyed a profound sense of compassion that resonated deeply. And beneath the title, in equally straightforward type, by Claire Langdon and James Rowan, the names together sparked curiosity across the world. A renowned novelist emerged from a long hiatus, accompanied by an unknown girl. The intrigue drew readers in, but it was the narrative within that kept them engaged. The narrative extended beyond Claire. It transcended the mere theme of kindness. It was a matter of deciding to show compassion even when the universe presented countless reasons to turn away. The opening chapter painted a picture of a dreary morning, a crisp $5 bill, and a girl who offered what she could scarcely part with. However, as the audience delved deeper into the narrative, they discovered it was not merely a singular event. The narrative was rich with tales of genuine individuals. Claire's neighbors, her friends, and the strangers she had once brushed past on the street. Individuals who offered their support in silence, without seeking recognition. It encompassed James's musings as well, observing Claire from a distance in a coffee shop, convinced he was merely analyzing her, only to realize he was actually gaining insights from her presence. He described her generosity with the reverence of an artist, and the humility of one who had nearly forgotten the essence of grace. The book swiftly ascended the bestseller list, not due to its flashiness or wit, but because it resonated with a sense of authenticity. It circulated among book clubs, its pages worn and creased. Educators shared passages in their classrooms, and kind-hearted individuals tucked notes into the copies they donated to libraries. This brought tears to my eyes in the most beautiful way. You brought back memories of my grandmother. Today, I treated someone to coffee because of this. Claire, unexpectedly thrust into the spotlight, was taken aback. She had never envisioned any of it. The spotlight unsettled her, and the throngs left her feeling depleted. Yet, as she addressed audiences in libraries, schools, and shelters, her voice trembled less with each occasion. "I didn't create this book for recognition," she stated in an early interview. "I created this piece to remind us that kindness is always valuable, particularly in times of struggle." With her portion of the royalties, Claire secured a slender corner building adorned with a weathered blue awning and flaking paint. She chose the name Sugar and Light, a title she had jotted down in the margins of her journal long ago. The space combined the warmth of a bakery with the charm of a literary sanctuary. Each morning, the front windows fogged with the inviting aroma of freshly baked bread, cinnamon, and rich coffee. Within the space, young ones recite from well-loved picture books, their pages worn and cherished. Young adults gathered at the corner tables, enjoying complimentary cookies and browsing through paperbacks from the Take One, Keep One shelf. Everyone was welcomed, neither for a lack of funds nor for a deficiency in optimism. In the corner, nearly every day, there was James quietly observing. Not as a creator, not as one deserving acknowledgement, just as a person who enjoyed witnessing tales develop over warm scones and sugar-sticky hands. He discovered a sanctuary, not within grand walls, nor under the spotlight, but by a window, close to the counter where Claire brushed flour from her cheek and greeted each visitor with a smile, as if they were the very reason she had opened the door that day. To many patrons, he was Mr. James, a reserved older gentleman with a notebook perpetually half-filled, who savored his coffee at a leisurely pace and remembered the names of every child who sat reading next to him. From time to time, someone would acknowledge his presence. "Are you not James Rowan, the author?" He would give a slight nod, then gesture towards the woman standing behind the counter. Yet it all began with her. Claire continued to write, but no longer from a sense of urgency. In the serene moments between baking batches of muffins, she put pen to paper. She crafted narratives about genuine individuals, everyday folks who performed lovely, unnoticed acts. Every other Friday, she and James began to host enchanting storytelling nights for everyone to enjoy. Individuals recounted stories, some chaotic, some amusing, some poignant, all undeniably authentic. During one of those evenings, a child rose and shared, "My mom covered someone's groceries last week." She expressed that it expanded her heart. Claire beamed with delight. That was everything she had ever dreamed of. In a realm captivated by grandeur, they had crafted something subtly exquisite. And in the corner beneath a sign that read, "Free coffee, no questions," James would glance around at the warm lights, the shelves filled with tales, and the woman who once handed him $5 without expecting anything back and think, "This is the finest chapter I've ever crafted." Sometimes, the most profound narrative isn't the one shared with the masses. It's the one you experience together, day in and day out. The winter evening draped itself over the city, enveloping it in a serene silence. Snow descended gently, blanketing the pavement beyond sugar and light. Within the bakery, a cozy radiance enveloped the space, accompanied by the gentle murmur of the oven, the enticing aroma of cinnamon and butter, and the delicate dance of candlelight adorning the counter. The clock had struck beyond the usual time. Chairs stood piled high, the lights softened to a gentle glow, yet Claire glided silently through the kitchen, adding the finishing flourishes to the cake she had been crafting since midday. It was a straightforward creation, a delicate vanilla sponge, airy whipped cream, and a graceful swirl of caramel adorning the surface. Yet the cake held no significance. It was meant for those it was meant for. James showed up exactly when she expected him to. He entered through the back door, shaking off the snow from his coat, his eyebrows raised in astonishment at the soft glow of the dim lights and the dancing flames of the candles. Claire stood before the cake, her apron speckled with flour, her hair gathered in a casual bun. "Happy birthday," she murmured gently. James opened and closed his eyes in quick succession. "Did you recall? I always hold on to the ones who hold on to me," she replied. He gazed at the cake, then turned his attention back to her. "It's been more than 2 decades since someone has baked for me." "Indeed," she remarked, "you have truly deserved it." They lingered at the modest kitchen table, a quiet duo in their own world. Minimalist, solitary. The aroma of warmth lingered in the air, accompanied by the gentle rhythm of quiet breaths, and an unspoken connection that had blossomed long before either acknowledged its existence. James paused, his fork resting on the plate after that initial taste. "Throughout my existence," he remarked, "I have penned tales of love. I have molded it, formed it, and endeavored to articulate it. However, I believe I have only just begun to truly experience it." Claire gazed at him, her eyes glistening with a softness and certainty that was unmistakable. "And all I ever needed," she expressed, "was someone who recognized my worth. Neither an idea nor a cause, simply myself." James delved into the depths of his coat pocket. He revealed a small velvet pouch, devoid of any box or ribbon. Within lay a delicate ring, slender and weathered, featuring a pearl that seemed to cling precariously to its setting. It lacked novelty, showing no glimmer of freshness. "This was my mother's," he remarked. "She advised me to hold on to it until I encountered someone who was gentle when unseen, who offered not for recognition but simply because their nature compelled them to share." He gazed into Claire's eyes, his voice softening. She never specified that it needed to be someone wealthy or remarkable, only that they should be genuine. He extended the ring. "Claire, will you remain? Is it not only here, in this existence, alongside me?" Claire gazed at him, a smile slowly spreading across her face. "I've been staying," she murmured. "I simply wasn't aware that it had a specific name." She gently slipped the ring onto her own finger. Without any drama or loud cheers, there were simply 2 hands, one undeniable truth, and a love that had developed gradually, much like dough quietly rising. The following morning, the bakery opened its doors as it always did. Yet, there was an unmistakable change. Little ones burst through the entrance, laughter spilling from their lips. The aroma of freshly baked scones wafted through the air, as James settled into his familiar seat by the window. Claire stood behind the counter, meticulously arranging a tray of muffins, when a curious little girl inquired, "Miss Claire, What does that sign mean? She gestured toward the hand-painted wooden board that James had hung the previous night above the door, the very place where kindness first took root. Claire gazed upward at it. Her gaze became gentle. Signifies, she remarked, that this location was established on an endless foundation. Outside, snowflakes twirled gracefully in the glow. Claire and James stood side by side on the steps of the bakery, her hand intertwined with his, steam rising from the paper cups they held in their other hands. Without the intrusion of cameras or the clamor of headlines, there exists only the joyful laughter of children dashing by, the comforting embrace of a home woven from tales and sweetness, and the serene wonder of two souls who discovered one another, not through luck, but through unwavering belief. There were no further trials, no more facades, just this, an unbidden love, given freely in return. For it is often true that the deepest affection is derived not from possessions, but from the generosity of what you decide to share. At times, affection isn't presented in opulence or adorned with elaborate displays. At times it manifests as a simple act of kindness, a comforting cup of coffee, a cherished ring handed down through the years, and the decision to remain. Claire and James did not encounter one another through destiny or whimsical stories. In a fleeting instance of gentle kindness, they discovered one another, a connection that blossomed into trust, then transformed into a sense of belonging, evolving into something undeniable, for it was genuine. If this tale touched your soul, if it brought to mind that even the tiniest act of kindness can transform lives, then we welcome you to linger with us a bit more. Join soul-stirring stories for more narratives of compassion, redemption, and love that flourish beyond the bounds of judgment. For often, the most impactful narratives are those that softly resonate, rather than loudly proclaim. Until we meet again in the next tale.